Today is Wednesday morning, the 27th day of the month of Tammuz, and we are on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. Well, really, we are up to Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. We are at the bottom of Daf Beis Amud Beis, just before the bottom of the page, where the Gemara is now discussing an additional, perhaps, proof and disproof to our so far 2-day standing conversation of what exactly the word or means. Does or mean light, or does or mean night? What exactly does it mean? Of course, the word or, as we have pointed out, means light, but in the context of the Mishnah, does the period of time referred to as or refer to as is that night or is that light? Right at the bottom of the page, Daf Beis Amud Beis, says the Gemara Meisveh, an additional objection. Haya omed kol halayla. If you have a kohen that is standing the whole night, umakriv al mizbech, and he is offering things on the mizbech, le'ora, at ora, and we'll have to define what that is. Ta'un kiddush yadayim raglaim. He still requires the sanctification of hands and feet. That means he has to go to the kior and he has to wash his hands and feet. Divrei Rabbi. That is the opinion of Rabbi. So it sounds like that's a dead giveaway that the word ora means daytime, meaning kind of standing the whole night. He's being makriv things to the mizbech. What exactly would he be makriv on the mizbech? So there are no korbanos that are brought at night. All the korbanos are finished up by the by the late afternoon. That's by minchatam, with the karban tamid shel bein harabayim. That is the final thing that is brought in the mizbech, with one exception, and that exception, of course, is Maseches Pesachim. The only thing that was ever brought after the karban mincha shel bein harabayim is the karban pesach, and that's why the karban mincha shel bein harabayim on Erev Pesach was brought at the earliest time, called mincha gedola, so that you had the whole afternoon to bring the rest of the korbanos. But there are no korbanos that are brought at night. So what does that mean? It means that the chalav and emurim, the fats and the limbs that were not burnt during the daytime of the korbanos, meaning that weren't finished, so they piled them up, and then at the end of the day, they would be makriv them at night, and that is, says the Gemara in Brachos, that is where the concept of mariv comes from, keneged the korbanos. But nevertheless, le'ora, at ora, he needs to wash his hands and feet. That is the opinion of Rabbi. It sounds like ora means daytime. Ora means day. Says the Gemara, nah, ora shani. Yeah, we're talking about or. Rebbe's usage of the word ora here doesn't tell us anything about our Mishnah's usage of the word or. Ora specifically would mean day, but or might not. Bottom three words. Meisibe Marzutra raised an additional objection. The halacha is as follows. Ha'mapelas ora l'shmoinim ve'echad. Bit of background. The halacha is that a woman that has a baby, or a woman that has a miscarriage, has the din of a yoledis. A yoledis is one of the kinds of tumah that is yetzalav migufa, that comes out from a person's body, and that will render her tamea. It'll also require her to bring a korban before being able to eat from the korbanos. That would be at the process, at the end of the process of tahara, she has to bring a korban. The halacha is, however, that if a woman has a baby and then she bleeds, or something else comes out of her, some afterbirth or something of any nature, for the first 80 days that follow the birth, that is all considered to be part of the same birth, meaning it is both tahara midaraisa in terms of the blood itself, and she only has to bring one korban at the end of those 80 days. So the halacha is as follows: what happens about a mapelas, a woman that miscarries, or l'shmanim ve'echad, at the or of shmanim ve'echad, something else comes out of her at the or of the 81st day. So what exactly is this? Beis Shammai potrim mi karban. Beis Shammai says no, she's potter from bringing a karban, i.e., this is still part of the same birth or miscarriage that happened 80 days ago. Beis Hillel says no, you have to bring a new karban. What's this discussion? Amru Beis Hillel Hillel says to Beis Shammai, Ma'ishna Shmanim ve'echad miyom shmanim ve'echad. What's the difference between of the 81st day and the Yom of the 81st day, the day of the 81st day? Im shiva layla tuma, if it is the same with regards to tuma, meaning that she would become tameh again, it would be a new tumah. It's not considered to be part of the previous one. This would render her tameh. Should it not be the same din with regards to the karban? So midkamar Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, ma'ishna orishman ve'echad miyam shman ve'echad. But since Beis Shammai is Beis Hillel is saying to Beis Shammai, what's the difference between the of the 81st day and the Yom of the 81st day? Shmamina urtuhu. So it comes out from this clearly that is urta. Doesn't mean light. Means night. That is the contrast that Beis Hillel is making, and the Gemara doesn't have any rejection to this understanding of the Mishnah. It therefore says the Gemara, Shmamina, this is good. This is an additional proof that in the Mishnah the word means urta. So far we've had two clinching proofs that the word means urta. Nevertheless, we are continuing to discuss an additional possibility. Maseches says the Gemara as follows: there is a possibility that Yachal, you might have thought, that one could eat a karban at the of the third day. What exactly is this situation? So there are there are different time periods that a person could eat a karban. Karban Pesach, famously, has the shortest period of time. We'll see that machlokas much later on in the Maseches. But Karban Pesach, we know that you either have to finish by nighttime. You start eating it at night, and you have to finish. You have to finish the karban either by chatzos or by the morning. Those are the two shitas, and those are the two shitas that we have by Afikohen because of that din. In general, if a person is bringing a karban, one has time that day to eat the karban, and one has time that night to eat the karban. There are some karbanos, however, that you have that day, that night, and the next day as well. So you have 2 days and a night. Says the Gemara as follows, quoting from the Brisa. Maybe you could eat the karban. This is a karban shlamim or lishlishi by the of the third day. What exactly does this mean? Vidinhu, and it makes sense. Zvachim ne'echalim liyom echad. If you have zvachim that are eaten for one day, and shlamim in general are eaten for 2 days, just like there, with regards to the zvachim that are eaten with 1 day, you also have that night. Laila is holech achar hayom in Karbanos. The night follows the day in the Karbanos. Afkan, so too here, Laila achar hayom. There is a night that follows after the day. Says the Gemara, says the Brisa, and then we'll explain the proof. Talmud Lomer b'yayim zivchachem ye'achel umi macharas v'anasar ad yom. So, says the Gemara, you might have thought that you could eat it or liyom hashlishi, but the pasuk says b'yayim zivchachem ye'achel. You can eat it on the day that you bring it, umi macharas, and on the next day, v'anasar ad yom. But the thing that is left until the day, says the Gemara, ba'oid yom hu nechal. It can be eaten in the daytime. Ve'ena nechal le'or shlishi, but cannot be eaten to the or of the shlishi. Says the Brisa, continuing, Yachal yisarif miyad, maybe it needs to be burnt immediately. V'dinu, it makes sense. Zvachim nechalim le'yayim ve'layla echad zvachim, which are eaten during the day, v'layla echad, and the following night, and shlamim are eaten for 2 days and 1 night, just like in Zvachim, when you finish the period of time of eating at the end of that first night. So you have the daytime, the nighttime, the next morning you are obligated in the Shreifa. Afkan, so to you Teikef La'achila Shreifa. You also have the halacha of Teikef La'achila Shreifa. As soon as the eating concludes, that is when the halacha of Shreifa, of burning the remains of that korban, now applies. Talmud Loimar, but the pasuk tells you, "Vanasar mivasar zevach b'yom hashlishi be'ish yisarif." That which is left over of the korban, b'yom hashlishi, on the third day, be'ish yisarif, needs to be burnt in a fire. B'yom ata sarif v'i ata sarif b'layla. You can only burn the korban, the remainders of the korban, during the daytime, but not at night. Now, there's the proof that the Gemara says. Maybe you would think you could eat it at the of the third day. Alma, this implies urtu. This implies that the word in fact, means urta. It means nighttime, and it does not mean daytime. And this is a third proof that the Gemara now has presented, that the word in our Mishnah is going to mean night as opposed to meaning light. Tashma, come along, and here we have an additional discussion. Shel Yom Kippurim, at the of Yom Kippur. What exactly is the of Yom Kippur? So let's see. Mispalos Sheva u'misvade. The halacha is that a person is going to daven Sheva, is going to daven 7 brachos, u'misvade, and say the vidui. What exactly is this context that it's talking about? So it's important to point out that all of the tefillas that we have during the week start with, or all throughout the year, start with the same 3 brachos and end with the same 3 brachos. We start off with brachos, with the brachos of avos, gvuros, and kedushos. That's the first 3, and we end with ritzei, with avoda and todah, which is Madi Manach Lach, and then Shalom Sim Shalom. And in the middle, during the week, we have 13 brachas of requests, and Shabbos and Yantif, Rosh Chodesh, Yom Kippurim. We have 1 bracha in the middle, that is the bracha of Kedushas Hayom. The only exception to this is Rosh Hashanah, where you have Malchus, Zichronos, and Shofros in the middle. So says the Gemara that Mispalel Sheva, that on Yom Kippur one is going to daven these 7 brachos, misvade, and then at the end, usually the way that we have it in our Siddur is right at the end of the Sim Shalom, just before Elokai Netzar. That's where we do the Slach Lanu. That's where we do the Hashem V'Gadnu. That's where we do the Vid. Says the Mishnah, quoting from the Brisa, Shachris, in the morning, Mispalo Sheva u'Mizvade. Once again, you daven 7 brachos, and then you do Vid. But Musaf, Mispalo Sheva u'Mizvade. At Musaf, you are going to daven 7 brachos and do Vid. But Mincha, at Mincha time, Mispalo Sheva u'Mizvade, you are once again going to be Mispalo Sheva, daven 7 and Misvade, and do the Vid. Ba'arvis, at Mariv, Mispalel Me'ein Shman Asar. And at Mariv, there's an interesting halacha. One is going to daven the Me'ein Shman Asar. What exactly is Me'ein Shman Asar? So instead of davening the regular Shman Esrei, which would be 3 brachas at the beginning, 3 brachas at the end, and davening 13 brachas, or in the context of the Mishnah, only 12 brachas, because this was from before Velam al Shinim was written. Instead of davening that, one is going to have the Me'ein Shmana Asar. This is what's called the Tefillah of Havinenu. There is a Nusach HaTefillah for people that are in a big hurry, or people that are in a dangerous situation that cannot daven the entirety of the 18 brachas. We have 1 bracha that begins with Havinenu, that covers all of the requests of the full extent of the 12 brachas of request, and shortens that all into 1 bracha. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says, Mishum Avosav, in the name of his fathers, Mispalo Shmana Asher Shlemus. No. You can't daven this one bracha in the middle that covers all 12 requests. You daven all 18 brachas of the Shmana Esrei. Because one is required to say the bracha of Havdalah, of Atachon and Tanu, in the bracha of Chan and Adas. Says the Gemara, Alma or Urtahu, that it seems to be a dead giveaway here, that since the Mishnah began with Or Shel Yom Kippurim, at the Or of Yom Kippur, or has to be nighttime, has to be the night of Yom Kippur, Shema Mina, and this is now a fourth conclusive proof that the word Or means Urta. Since when you go through the schedule of the brachas, and also you go through the order and the timing of the tefillahs that are listed here, there is a very clear indication that Or is the Mariv of Yom Kippur night itself, where a person is going to daven 7 brachas mizvade. That would not have any other time period, because it couldn't be Shachris, and it couldn't be Musaf, and it couldn't be Mincha. Those things are all listed, and therefore Or means Urta. Says the Gemara further, an additional proof. Tashma, come along. Let's hear. The Tani Devei Shmuel, it was taught in the house of Shmuel, the base medrash of Shmuel. Leile arba asar balkim esachametz le'or haner. This is a very dead giveaway. Leile arba asar, at the night of the 14th of Nisan, balkim esachametz le'or haner. One checks for the chametz le'or haner, at the light of the candle. Alma, what that means is Or in our Mishnah is Urta, means nighttime, because in the base medrash of Shmuel they taught this over as Leile Arba Asar. What exactly does it mean? Tani de Beis Shmuel. So this is an important structure that the Gemara has in many places. That in the base medrash of Shmuel is an Amora. He lives in Bavel. It's the first generation Amora. We have a Tana. Tana means, in general, a rabbi of the Mishnah, but in the Batei Medrash of the Amoraim, they always had a guy that was a Shalom Meshav that knew all of the Mishnahs and all of the Brises and knew them all by heart. His job was to make sure that whenever any of the Talmidim had a question, they could go up to them and say, is there such a Brisa, is there such a Mishnah? And he would be holding in all of them. And they have Tani de Beis Shmuel, the way that it was taught in the house of Shmuel, meaning when they would say over these Brises in the house of Shmuel. So in Shmuel's Beis Medrash, the way that it was taught is Leile Arba Asar, that they taught it as Leile, not as Or, and this is not a totally different religion. They believe in the same time period, the same thing. So this Brisa, the way that it was taught in the house of Shmuel, is telling us conclusively once again that the word Or does not mean light in the context of a time period. It means nighttime. Good. Says the Gemara, Ella. So we had a machlokas all the way at the beginning of Daf Beis Amud Aleph, that Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda had a machlokas what the word Or means, and we said one holds that it means nagi, and one says that it means lele. It means light or it means night. So now the Gemara is going to reinterpret that machlokas if it's so clear and obvious from all of the brises and all of the mishnayos. Not from any of the psukim, interestingly enough, but from all of the brises and all the mishnayos, that when the brises of the mishnayos use the word Or, it means nighttime. That how could we have such machlokas? Ela bein Rav Huna bein Rav Yehuda, both according to Rav Huna and according to Rav Yehuda, the kule alma Or urtu. Everybody agrees that Or means nighttime. V'lo pligi, and there was never an argument. Mar ki asher. Each one was explaining this Mishnah in accordance with the vernacular, the verbiage of their hometown. Ba'asrei de Rav Huna karu nagi. In the hometown of Rav Huna, they referred to Or as nage, which literally means, in Aramaic, the word means illumination, but they translated it, but it meant nata. Uva asrei de Rav Yehuda karu lele. And in the place of Rav Yehuda, they called it natam, literally, but it was both referring to the same time period, meaning nage is the Aramaic translation of the word Or, and they would simply translate it and they knew what it meant. V'tanadi done. So now the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question that all of us have been bothered by. We have just spent a full daf of Gemara and then some discussing whether the word or means Laila or it means Yom. So v'tanadi done. Our Tana, my time, Dani Lele. Why did why did our Mishnah not just begin Lele Arabasa? And we would then have understood this very well. Says the Gemara, no, Lishna Ma'al Yehudanakit, because the Mishnah is being sensitive to only use elevated language, positive language, language that is inspiring. You don't want to start off the Masechta with nighttime. You want to start with the concept of or. And if or could be used to mean nighttime, so that's a much more inspiring way to begin the Masechta. Where is the principle behind this? Because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, like the Tana Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi tells us, the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, la'olam al yotzi adam davar miguna mipiv. A person has to be exceedingly careful to not let something disgusting come out of their mouth. Shaharei, what's the proof? Who taught us this? HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught us this. Shaharei ike makasu shmoina osios, because the Torah itself made a detour to include an additional 8 letters, not to say something that was not positive. Didn't want to say anything. That was davar maguna. Shenamar. What's the proof? Mina behema hatahara. When Noach is told to bring animals to the teva, so he's told that you have to bring min habehema hatahara from the animals that are tahar. Umin habehema asher enena tahara. Those additional 3 words, asher enena tahara, that is not pure, from the animals that are pure and from the animals that are not pure. We have a word for that. The word for that is the word tame. Why wouldn't the Torah just simply have said tame, impure? Why does the Torah say asher enena tahara, that is not pure? Because, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the Torah is trying to teach us this incredible principle that you should never say anything maguna. You should not say anything disgusting, something unpleasant. Says the Gemara further, Rav Papa tells us, Tesha, not only has the Torah gone around to add an additional 8 letters, the Torah in another place adds 9 letters. Shnei Amar, ki yeh v'cha ish asher lo tahar mikre laila. When you will have a man that is not pure as a result of a mikre laila, as a result of a nocturnal emission. That's the halacha of going, making sure that that the person that is not tameh, but not tahar, from a mikre laila has to go outside of the machane. So says the pasuk, ki yeh b'cha ish asher lo yeh tahar. Those words, asher lo yeh tahar, could simply have been stated as tameh. Nevertheless, the Torah is not going to tell you a davar maguna. The Torah is going to tell you in the opposite way. Ravina says, Eser, there is another place. The pasuk says not just 9 additional letters, but 10 additional letters, because vav de tahar, because in the word tahar, in this case, tahar is male. It has a vav in it. It does not. It is not chaser, meaning it could have said tes hey resh, but it says tes hey vav resh, even an additional letter. Rav Achar bar Yaakov Amar sheish. There is another place where there are 16 letters that are added to the Torah. Well, this place, in fact, ki Amar mikre hu bilti tahar. The pasuk. Talking about the same context, but a different part of the pasuk in Shmuel. Ki amar mikra hu bilti tahar hu ki loy tahar. Bilti tahar ki loy tahar. It could just have said ki amar mikra hu tame. But bilti tahar ki hu ki loy tahar, those 16 additional letters are all there to avoid saying the word tame. As much as we can avoid saying the word tame, we avoid saying the word tame. Now, it's important to point out, so the Torah says the word tame all over. Why not say the word tame? So apparently, and the Rishonim and Acharim deal with this question, if the Torah needs to tell you a din of tame, so the Torah will tell you a din of tame. But if the Torah is telling you a story, so if you don't need to hear the word tame in the story, so that is avoided. And says the Brisa as follows, Tanan Debei Rabbi Yishmael, Once again, there's a Tana teaching in the house of Rabbi Shmuel. A person should always speak in a clean way. Shaharei bezav kare merkav isha kare moshav. With regards to a zav, a man that has some kind of emission, the Torah refers to him as sitting on something called merkav. He's riding on it. V'isha, and by woman, karai moshav, and by woman, that is not called riding, it is called sitting. So it's not to conjure the image of a woman riding, the Torah instead refers to her as sitting, even though it's talking about exactly the same din. V'omer v'sivchar lashon arumi. And the pasuk in Iyov tells us that that one chooses a language that is tricky, that is crafty, like the Nachash in Gan Eden was Arum Mikol Beima. He was trickier. So it's a tricky lashon. Va'omer v'das sfasai barur mi leilu. And the pasuk also says that which is on my lips. V'das sfasai, and knowledge of my lips. Barur mi leilu. They speak with clarity. My va'omer, what's this additional va'omer thing? That the halacha is that when it comes to dinim deraisa, you have to speak in a lashon hakiah. But when it comes to the dinim derabanan, you do not. Tashma va'omer v'sivcha lashon harumim. You choose the lashon harumim. Maybe you'll say hani mili b'derabanan. Maybe this only replies to dinim derabanan, but not to dinim deraisa. You have to say clearly in dinim deraisa, v'mili deraisa. V'mili da'alma. But when it comes to the mili da'alma with regular day-to-day speech, when you're not talking about halachas deraisa derabanan, but v'das v'sai bar milelu, that which my lips no, bar mi leilu. They're going to speak clearly, meaning they're going to speak with purity, with clarity. That tells us that you always have to speak in a euphemistic way. And the Gemara is going to have a objection to the question of Merkov and Moshev, but I'll leave you just with this sentiment for today. That the Lubavitcher Rebbe once had somebody that came to him, the Klausenberger Rebbe. And he said to him, I am building the hospital in Netanya. And he said to him in Lashon HaKodesh, he says, I'm building a Beis Cholim in Netanya. And the Rebbe said to him, don't call it a Beis Cholim, call it a Beis Refuah. Don't call it a house of sickness, call it a house of healing. It's always better to say something. It's the Gemara. It's always better to speak in a not negative way. You have to speak in a positive way and to avoid saying anything that is negative. And therefore, it says you should refer to it as a Beis Refuah. Everybody should have a wonderful day. To be continued tomorrow.